Hello and welcome to this BFI home event in partnership with Radio Times. I'm Rhianna Dillon and I am absolutely thrilled to be in conversation with the wonderful Lennie James, who is here to talk about Save Me 2, the sequel to the Sky series Save Me, and I'm sure we will discuss a lot of other things as well. Lennie James, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
You're more than welcome. Thank you very much for inviting me.
This is very exciting to talk to you. I'm quite disappointed I don't get to meet you in face-to-face, but lockdown meeting is still pretty good.
It's all we've got left, isn't it?
It is. How has your lockdown been so far?
It has been a little discombobulating because I am in Austin, Texas, which is not where I live in America. It's where I had been working, and I couldn't return to my home in LA because we're having work done on it. And so I find myself staying in Austin, Texas. So it's a little odd.
What is the mood like in Austin? I mean, there's been so much going on in America, but especially in Austin, I think there have been protests and all sorts going on. How's that?
Austin is, the motto for Austin is keep Austin weird. And it is kind of historically a liberal bubble in a conservative state. Mm-hmm. And there have been protests over the last few days and over the last couple of weekends. It is slightly caught between dealing with the first pandemic in a bit like Texas, but trying to be something else in the sense that it kind of locked down a little bit too late and it has opened up a little bit too quickly. Mm-hmm. So the numbers at the moment are on the rise, not on the decline. So that's a little bit worrying.
Yeah.
But and it's dealing with the other kind of pandemic in the way that quite a lot of America is really, which is trying to raise its protest and trying to focus its rage.
It's been such a sort of awful time for everyone, I guess, but it's been really interesting watching it from the UK and seeing the ripples around the world. And you know, there have been many protests here which have been really adamant I wanted to join. Have you been taking part in anything?
We're taking part on one on the weekend. It is. It's been tricky with the whole COVID thing, and being careful about that. And on the marches, it's an area that is going to be very exposing because people are shouting and a bit, and quite rightly. But it is, things happen when you shout. Yes. That means that it can become very contagious. So we've been navigating a couple of them, and we're going properly on Sunday, really, to kind of register our protest.
Amazing. And what about you personally? Have you been writing in lockdown?
I have been writing in lockdown. Yeah, I have. I've been working on something while I'm here in between. It's difficult because today is a particularly tricky day. It's a different day because, when people ask you, how are you doing in lockdown? My stock answer is there are good days and there are bad days, or some days are better than others. And today, after the President of the United States at this moment in history announcing that he was going to restart his re-election campaign, and he was going to start that on the 19th of June in Tulsa, which, for those people who don't know, the 19th of June over here is Juneteenth Day, and it's a day that marks the emancipation of the slaves in this country. And he's going to do it in Tulsa, which was the location of one of the biggest post-slavery massacres of Black people in this country on what was then termed Black Wall Street. And to make that announcement at this particular time just seems to me to be so disheartening and so tone deaf to what is going on in the world, but also much more frightening than that. Seems to me that the only explanation for doing that is it's a dog whistle to some really, really dangerous people with some really, really dangerous ideologies. And the most powerful man in the world is saying, hey, I'm on your side. And that's really scary. So today's not a good day.
No.
So anything can happen in the next half hour.
How do you sort of think that the TV and film industry is going to show their allyship, I suppose, over the next few weeks, months, years?
I hope if they say anything, they do it informed, and they realize and this is a varied thing amongst different people, that some have a voice that is to lead, some have a voice that is to direct, and some have a voice that is to support. And I hope people realize in which position they stand and in where their help is most best needed, really.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if you saw the George Floyd's funeral, but when the kind of religious leaders were making their speeches, and I think his name is Steve Wells, he's a white reverend from Houston, and I thought the tone that he struck was a really good one. And I thought that if you're going to show up and you're going to say something, I felt like he's said a lot of the right things in a lot of the right ways. And I hope that white America particularly heeds his example, and that whatever they are feeling now and whatever they feel that they're called to do, that sustains them when we get to the points that really matter, i.e. when people are called on to register their votes. And not just in the presidential election, but all elections coming up. I think if whoever's been voted, whether it's for sheriff or whether it's for mayor or whether it's for Senate, Congress or presidency, if this issue is not front and center on their agenda, I think you have to look very deeply inside yourself as to whether or not you can vote for them. But that's just one man's opinion.
It's a very solid opinion. Let's move on then and start talking about Save Me. And you're the creator, writer, and you star in it. So tell us what sparked...
I also did the breakfasts, and I had a hand in some of the costumes.
So go on, tell us about what sparked Save Me.
What sparked Save Me, I mean, I've said this a few times, but actually was a telephone call for Man Mensa, who at the time was head of drama at Sky. And she phoned my agent, Jess Sykes, and she said, why isn't Lennie writing, and how do we get him writing again? And my agent, quite rightly, because that's why she's my agent, said, commission him. And so Jess phoned me up and asked me, did I have that Anne was asking whether or not I had an idea for a returning television series, and I said, well, let me have a think. And I think for some reason I had a bit of time on my hands, and I think I was in Detroit, on my own in Detroit, over a long weekend, and I sat around probably drinking a little bit too much bourbon and having conversations with myself about ideas, and came up with Save Me.
So tell us, for those who might not have watched it yet, but will be rushing to their TVs after this chat, just give us a brief outline of what Save Me and Save Me 2 are about.
Well, if you haven't seen any of them, I should start at the beginning. And basically, the initial idea of Save Me is a man, Nelly Rowe, who is a kind of ne'er-do-well. He is the guy in the pub that 10 or 15 years ago, men came to that pub to drink and women came to that pub to get near Nelly. But it was 10 or 15 years ago, and he should have outgrown it, and he doesn't. And one day at one of his girlfriend's houses, the police break in and arrest him and accuse him of grooming and kidnapping his estranged 13-year-old daughter. And Nelly learns, well, we learn that Nelly didn't kidnap his daughter, but whoever did it pretending to be him. And she left home believing that she was going to meet her father, and Nelly sets out to prove he didn't do it, to find the person who did it in his name.
You have such a fantastic cast in this, fantastic British cast: Suranne Jones, Stephen Graham, Leslie Manville in series 2, Kerry Godliman, but to name a few. So this show feels as much as an ensemble as it is Nelly's story. How did you work with these actors to create that really unique, really tight-knit feel that you all have?
I think the important thing is, I suppose, that I've learned, is that at at every single stage, you need to explain yourself as concisely and as well as you possibly can. This is what it should look like. This is what it should feel like. So, for example, the way that conversation works, the dialogue works in Save Me, is that it's my effort over and over again is not to make it feel like TV, not to make it, particularly at a time when we have a very, very sophisticated audience and we have an amazing palette of different television that's happening at the moment. I just wanted this not to feel too much like TV and not to have kind of, so when people are talking and people are talking over each other and all of that. So at every single stage, I made that clear. I would say this is really important. So every time someone came on, whether they were involved in sound or not involved in sound, and they must have thought I was crazy, I would go, oh, by the way, everybody talks at the same time. Everybody's making their points, and we've got to make it as real. And I think that fed through. So when we're finding directors, when we're finding the production company, when we're picking our sound guy, the only question I had to the sound guy is, because normally what happens when you have overlapping dialogue is one person says their dialogue, the other person says their dialogue, and then the sound guy in the edit crosses it over. I was like, I don't want that. I want it happening live and recorded live, because there's a spontaneity to that. So that's what we did, really. I mean, and that was true when we were casting it. People, when they were reading for the parts, read it overlapping. So I needed people who could get their heads around it, who could speak the words while somebody else is speaking the words. And all the way through, we held on to the bits that we felt were really, really important, and the bits that mattered to us.
And actually, Nelly's vernacular, like the very specific way that he speaks, he like misses out pronouns. It's very like world building. Did that come out naturally through the writing of his character? It's like the shorthand. His brain moves so fast that he skips all the unnecessary words almost.
It's just the way I heard it, to be absolutely honest. Yeah. I mean, I should get a more kind of intellectual answer for it. So
no, I want the honest answer.
I could go on a lecture tour and talk about the vernacular of my language and and how it all works. But it's just how I hear it in my head, and it's just based on the people whose lives I was trying to portray and whose code I was trying to use, really. And it is a vernacular that at its core is based in the specifics of South London and specifics of Southeast London, but it's also, I do take some kind of poetic license for it. I mean, in a weird way, it's both a kind of compliment and a little bit of an insult when people kind of go, was it improvised? And I go, no, it wasn't improvised. I worked bloody hard on those lyrics. You're having a laugh, aren't you? So, and it really was, I mean, there were places, probably mostly at the end of scenes or at the beginning of scenes, just getting people up to speed. There might have been elements of improvisation, but in the main, I wrote every single word that was there, along with the co-writers of Daniel and Marlon in the first season, and Daniel, Marlon, and Ema in the second.
That's funny people ask that, because it's so trim, actually, the script. There's nothing in there that doesn't need to be, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, my worry, and I'm somebody who, part of my development as an actor was working with a theatre company in which we created our work through improvisation. So I'm not someone who's in any way, shape or form anti improvisation. I just think you'd have to be really clear about how you're using it, so you just don't end up with lots of people swearing and shouting loudly, which is what mostly happens when you go on, make it up as you go along. But and another bit of me goes, if you were sat in the room with me while I'm poring over the specifics of every single word I'm using, and then go, did the actors make it up? They would wish they made it up. You're having a laugh. Oh my God, what's all this? It's amazing. Okay, or give it me again.
1, 2, 3. Surprise!
Hey, what? Wow, how? What's this? Wow, balloons and...
Balloons? Stacey's gonna destroy me. Balloons.
Stacey loves a balloon, trust.
You what?
Who this? Wait, what? Just listen to me. Hey. Take a deep as you can breath. Where are you? Can you text me where you are? I ain't hanging up until you do.
I'm gonna need your motor.
Where are we going? Everything all right?
Yes. Yeah, I got it. You just stay there, yeah? Just stay there, because I'm on my way.
So Save Me 2 is set 17 months after series 1. So was that a practical decision? Because I know that you were you were filming around The Walking Dead and Fear the Walking Dead as well. Or did you always plan it like that?
I didn't plan it like that. I'd be wrong to say that I planned it like that.
Okay.
But once we were getting into the logistics of when we could shoot it. I mean, the thing was when I first wrote Save Me, the first season, it wasn't necessarily something that I was going to be a part of as an actor. So there was no restrictions on when we could go into production, because it wasn't going to be limited or affected by what other work I might be committed to. That wasn't necessarily the case second time around. Once, I was playing Nelly. So we had to take that into consideration. We also had to take into consideration just the logistics of writing it. Because, that takes its own kind of sweet time. So once I sat down with Simon and Jess to decide about the second season, and we looked at dates, we realized that there was going to be a 2-year gap, and either you ignore that gap or you use it. And when I was thinking about it, thought about what are the benefits of just going as if it was the next day, or going further down the road, and the things that it brought up with the gap just excited me much more than just carrying on as if it hadn't happened.
And it's incredibly affecting, isn't it? That.
Well, I hope so. I mean, I think we made the right choice. It meant that we just had a different area to play, and again, it kind of dispels expectations. Really, I mean, I think that there is a kind of there was a sense after the first one that people were second guessing or thinking what they thought was going to happen next, and I didn't make the decision just in order to confound them. But I did want to work in an area that I felt I had the most room to play with, really, and that felt to me to, if season 1 was about the beginning of the hunt, season 2 became what happens at a point when people start asking you the question about giving up. What happens when you're at the stage where most people have gone back to their lives because they have to? It's no longer in the headlines. The missing pitch posters have been taken down, and the only people waking up thinking, where's Jody, are her mum and stepfather and her estranged father. And once I started thinking about that, the story just opened itself up.
And it's a show that deals with paedophilia, child rape, abuse, which obviously is incredibly difficult to watch. But how was it for you having to presumably do quite a bit of research into those areas?
Research in those areas are, as you would imagine, really, you have to be kind of selective. You research it as deeply as you feel sparks your imagination, and you just don't spend too much time in that hole, would be my advice to anybody else who was thinking of exploring anything in this shape or form. Mostly what I would do was look for already written articles or already written news reports of incidents. I didn't put anything into the search engine that could be misconstrued. So you explore stuff, and then you allow your imagination to kind of fill in the gaps, but only as much as you needed, because we also, right from the beginning with Nick Murphy as the director in the first season, and were very clear that we didn't want to be in any way exploitative in what we were showing either. We wanted to give people enough. If it was the important thing of anything that we were showing or anything we were talking about was about the impact that it was having on our characters. We weren't showing it for showing's sake. And I think we were successful at that. I mean, that actually it's much more by suggestion than kind of showing, and and it was particularly important for me in that one, particularly at a time when sometimes you feel you can pretty much show anything.
Yeah. Well, what was your experience of inhabiting a character that you'd written, you know, that was entirely your creation compared to taking on somebody else's?
No one believes me when I say that when I wrote it, I wasn't writing it for me to play Nelly, or at the very least, I wasn't writing it saying it can only be me and nobody else. So I remember having conversations with people going, if this is about something I want to get made, I don't want to get in the way of it being made. And I wrote, I believe, I might be wrong, Simon might be able to correct me on it. I think I wrote 2 episodes before it was kind of, everybody was going, it just has to be you, Lennie, so get over yourself and get on with it. And then I believe either the next draft I wrote or the next episode that I wrote, Nelly virtually wasn't in it. And everybody was like, what happened to Nelly? Where's he gone? And almost subconsciously, I just wrote him out. I was like, oh, I can't do that now, thinking of myself. So I almost kind of subconsciously kind of wrote him out. And I remember, I believe it was a note we got from Sky that said, we just need to put Nelly back in the story. And so what I did was just pick an actor whose energy and spirit, or a person whose energy and spirit I could kind of clue into when thinking about and writing Nelly, so I could take it away from myself. So I had to kid myself into not thinking I'm writing this part that I'm playing, but either some days I'd be kind of, I'm not going to name the actor because his head will get big, but and some days I'd be thinking I'm writing it for that particular guy, and on other days I'd, really just clue into memories or things I had of, some of the people that Nelly is a composite of, really. So that's how I kind of got through it. It was easier, I have to say, second time around than it was first time around, because he existed. And that was true for all of the characters, as it were, because, once I was writing the second time around, Tom Coombs was Goz and Susan Lynch was Stace. Yeah. So I wasn't just writing that image that I first had in my head. It was, I'm writing, Susan Lynch's Stace, and I'm writing Tom Coombs' Goz.
What I really loved seeing, I suppose, over the 2 series was how Nelly changed as a father. I suppose he became a father and then changed as a father. So, talk to me about what you wanted to say about fatherhood, and especially being a Black father on screen, which is something that is, we don't see it enough, and certainly not positive representations anyway.
I wanted to kind of explore, here's the thing, as Black folk, as people of colour, we are very quickly and easily stereotyped, and then the stereotype becomes the catch-all phrase that describes, an absent father or a poor Black father, and it's the big joke that we take on board ourselves, talking about, when we're growing up, where's your dad, and all of that kind of stuff. So we grow up with the trope. I just wanted to explore what that looks like in reality, or how it manifests itself. And for Nelly, that journey was about his own self-worth. And one of the things that Nelly returns to quite a lot in his journey, even though he's someone who seems to exist with a disproportionate amount of confidence in himself, and kind of is that actually he's someone who ultimately has a very low opinion of himself and is very kind of vulnerable. And he gives his child up thinking that she's better off without him. And his journey is realizing that she's not necessarily, and that and the stresses and strains that he has to learn to live up to and bear in order to be this girl's father. And I just wanted to explore the journey in which this particular man gets there. And yes, it's going to be representative on one level of Black fathers, because everything about Nelly and nothing about Nelly is about him being a Black man. And so that's going to be incorporated with that, and it's deliberate, it's not accidental. And so so it was something that I wanted to explore, partly because one of the things, one of the things in my life that is fundamental at this stage of my life to who I am is the fact that I'm the father of 3 daughters. And Nelly is the complete opposite of me in that regard. He is a man who until he's really, really, really pissed, doesn't mention his child.
Yeah.
And as he says to Claire, his kind of the mother of his child in the first season, for the last 10 years since he last saw his child when she was 3 years old, he hadn't really given her that much thought.
Mm-hmm.
And to say that out loud and to realize the shame that brings, I wanted to explore that journey to the point, getting him from there to the point where every night before he goes to sleep, his last thought is Jody, and in the morning when he gets up, his first thought is Jody. And I wanted to show that journey of the man, along with other things, but that was really at the core of the story I wanted to tell.
And I especially loved how then by series 2, he ends up as a father figure to 3 children. You know, you've got Grace as well, and then Samson as well.
Yes.
And so he sort of takes on as much as he possibly can emotionally by that point, doesn't he?
Yeah, but if you told him that, if you said to Nelly, you're like a father figure to 2 and an actual father to 1 who's not around and you're not there, the thought of it would scare the shit out of him and he'd go run into the hills. So and it is that kind of thing about if you exercise a particular muscle, it becomes easier to do the job, really. And that's what's happening with Nelly. I don't think he could describe the fact that he's been a surrogate father to Samson and Grace at all. The last thing he says to Samson in season 2 is, "Can I be your second best mate?"
Yes.
And that's about as much as he thinks he can handle, even though everybody around him, not least Zita, is trying to say to him, "You're doing a different job." And certainly with Grace, it was one of the things that right up front I wanted to explore was to create a dilemma for Nelly, where he had to choose between the young woman that he is not related to, but has come to operate as a surrogate father, and the young woman that he is related to but doesn't know. And how do you make that choice? And given that choice, which decision would you make?
Oh my God!
Don't like it, I didn't buy it.
Oh, happy birthday, darling.
Thank you.
Guys, pass up the blue one, pass up the blue one.
This
What's this?
Yes, definitely does.
Yeah, they do.
Like it?
Do I like it? Do I like being 50? Oh my God, what's this?
Open it.
Only your sheer bloody mindedness keeping that thing jacket shaped.
Thank you.
Bin the old one.
Put it on, Nelly.
I'm gonna give this one more night. Proper goodbye. Thanks, Ed.
And I just wanted to talk to you before we move on about how you talk about class in this and how you sort of do that through the local pub. I mean, I'm coming to you from Peckham right now, and so that local pub, it's a very familiar. Yeah, the Palm Tree. It's just the epitome of so much. Everything happens at the Palm Tree. Yeah. So yeah, tell me how you wanted to make that why you wanted to make that the hub, I suppose, of these people.
It was for a number of reasons, really. I mean, ostensibly, one of the other things that we haven't talked about, but it was very much there at the beginning of the whole concept of Save Me, is that it's a thriller. And in that thriller, a lot of the tropes of the thriller I wanted to do my version of, and some of the tropes of the thriller I wanted to mess with. And in a lot of the thrillers, either Chandler or whatever versions that you kind of come up with, there is a kind of precinct at the core of it, whether it's his office, whether it's a police station, whether, whatever it is, there is a single kind of unifying location at the middle of it. And in an early incarnation over that weekend in Detroit, where I was trying to figure out what the story I was going to present to Anne might be, Nelly had a different incarnation. He was an ex-cop or ex-special branch or ex-something that gave him more skills to go on the undertaking that he was about to go on. When I kind of was writing that version, it all seemed a bit too familiar.
Sounds like Taken. It sounds more similar to.
It sounds like Taken, and it sounds like all of that. So then I kind of thought, well, what if I make Nelly useless? And what if I make him kind of have no skills whatsoever, but also not be a fully formed human being?
Yeah.
And then I thought about people that I could kind of base it on. And one particular person that I kind of based it on was a family member who lived and hung out in southeast London. And I spent quite a lot of time in that area with that person and in the pub on the estate where they lived. And once I, in my head, located it there, everything opened up. All my characters opened up, my world opened up, the dimensions of the world all kind of opened up. And what was important for me about the pub is well, it's multi-layered, really. It is the role that it takes within a community like that. And it isn't, those pubs aren't pubs where that catch walk by trade. No one's walking by this pub and going, oi, let's just go in here.
Yeah.
Wow, we just discovered this pub. No, you have to be from that estate. You have to have gone to that estate or the surrounding areas, and you go in, and it's a place where people are known, where you can build a reputation like Nelly's reputation, which is he's kind of cock of the walk, but the walk is only 2 miles square. That's his kingdom. Yeah. That's as far as his rep goes. But within that 2 miles, he is king. And that's why the pub was kind of important. It also gave me the community. It also gave me the reasons why, whether you're happy, when you're happy, you go to the pub. When you're lonely, you go to the pub. When you're angry, you go to the pub. When you're heartbroken, you go to the pub. And people go there in search of a giggle. Yeah. People go there in search of company. People go there for all of the reasons they go there, just fed my story and kind of centered it in the shape that it took.
It's interesting that you mentioned about him perhaps being an ex-copper, because I mean you've played a bent copper yourself in Line of Duty.
Wasn't a bent copper. It was misunderstood. He made decisions for people that he cared about, and they weren't always the right decisions. Wasn't a bent copper, as he said over and over and over again.
He questioned me today. DS on it. He's putting it all together, but it's you he's after, Tony, not me. I was on a dark lane in fear of my life. I'll be acquitted. I'll be free, but you'll go to prison. What's that like, Tony, for a policeman? On the special wing with all the psychos and the pedophiles.
It's never gonna happen.
Your wife will know about us. Your daughters. What will they think of their daddy?
Don't talk about my kids.
It's not your future or mine, it's theirs.
Okay, well, tell me about working with Jed Mercurio right at the beginning of what is such a successful, long-running series.
Well, it's a bit like being right at the beginning of Walking Dead, which I know is something we're going to go on to talk about, is when we were doing it, we had no idea it was going to turn into what it turned into.
Yeah.
So when we were doing it, certainly for me, I knew going in it was a one and done. And at that point, I don't know whether or not Jed walked in there with 6 seasons laid out in front of him and with him in mind. We were just doing the first one, and it was taking shape. And I believe that the actors, that Adrian and Martin, were kind of signed up for 2 seasons or something like that, just to be on the safe side. but there wasn't a sense that it was going to turn into the phenomenon that it was. We were doing it on BBC Two. We did five episodes, and I had to be killed off. They knew that I was only going to be able to do one season. Yeah, so the three of them, AD, Vicky and Martin, I think those ones were signed up for a second season, but nobody else was. So it was this one thing that we were kind of doing, and it was the blueprint. We shot in Birmingham for a nondescript city, and every other one has been shot in Belfast. It was really, I describe it as us just kind of going to the moon. We were, no one had we didn't know what it was we were going. We didn't know what it was to expect it. Jed has this, I've done 2 things now with Jed, and his attention to detail is like no other. He's an incredibly accomplished human being. Everything he's done. He's an ER, emergency room doctor. He's a pilot. He's an author. He's a producer.
That's amazing.
He's a director. He's a award-winning writer. He's just got it all. If he sets out to do it, he's going to be the best at it. And so working with him was great. I had met him kind of a few years before when he was doing Bodies, and we had an argument about Roy Keane, and I thought Jed was a dick. And that was the end of. I thought, well, that's the end of that one, because he's a dick, and his opinion on Roy Keane is wrong.
Which side are you on? Are you pro Roy?
He's Mank.
Ah, okay.
He's Mank, and he was saying Roy Keane. I don't know. I think it was a comparison between Roy Keane and Patrick Vieira, and I got angry because I didn't want to be in a situation of bigging up Patrick Vieira because he plays for Arsenal, and I hate Arsenal.
Right.
So it was a tricky conversation, and I didn't enjoy the meeting. Suffice to say, I left and thought that was it. And then Line of Duty came around, and it was one of those jobs that, even if it hadn't turned into the phenomenon that it turned into, it would be up there with my favorite jobs of all time.
Oh, really?
And yeah, without question. It was a huge amount of fun. Myself and Neil Morrissey and Craig Parkinson and Adi Dunbar, Martin Compston, we just gelled, and we just became like a gang, and all of us were seconded to Birmingham, and we hung out together. We lived close to each other. We were cheek by jowl for I think it was 4 months or however it was that we were shooting, and we're still in touch, and they're friends for life. And and I've worked with Jed again, and maybe we may well work again with each other. I mean, he doesn't know that yet, but I figure if I say it enough times, it will happen. But yeah, and we've become friends, and that's a kind of important connection, both as an actor and a writer. So it's something that I cherish, really. So I'm glad that we got back in contact after the whole Roy Keane thing.
Yeah. Roy Keane shouldn't ruin any special relationships. It's not.
Well, no, he shouldn't. Fine player that he is.
He is a brilliant player.
Man, Jimbo really boned you.
Right. So you gonna help me or what?
Depends. You gonna tell us where we're going?
I-81, exit 77C. Second road you pass, you go along for 10 miles. I'll tell you where we go from there once you get me there.
Sorry, Morgan. You made it this long without us. Think you got this.
Hey. You can't just turn around and walk away.
We can't not mention, obviously, The Walking Dead and Fear the Walking Dead. Is that the longest running series that you've worked on?
Oh, by far.
So, I mean, how does that compare then when you're so immersed in like the character of Morgan Jones compared to something that you may be on for like one series like Line of Duty?
It's a weird thing, because I've been associated with the character now for 10 years. And I remember very clearly when I first came to America and I landed my first television series here. And you go through different stages when you're doing a television series here. What you actually score is a pilot. So you score, this is back in, 2006, 2007. So you score a pilot, you make the pilot, and then you have this whole, it's a thing that they do out here. They like to keep people nervous and not knowing what's going to happen. So you do a pilot, and then they test that pilot, and then you have to go into a pot to see whether or not they're going to make it into a television series. They make it into a television series, but you only get 9 episodes. You only get 13 episodes or something like that. And then you have to wait and see whether or not you're going to get the back 9 to make it up to 22 episodes. And everybody at the time when I was doing Jericho was really nervous about whether or not they were going to get the back 9. They were going to get, 22 episodes. By the time I had done the first 13 episodes, that was the longest I had ever played a character in my life. So when they were all going, oh, we hope we get the back 9, I was going, oh my God, how are we going to sustain this for another 9 episodes? You're having a laugh, aren't you? So I remember being in that mindset, and then you cut to, 3 years later, and I'm signing up for the possibility of playing a character that has gone on to last for 10 years. But having said that, for the first 5 years of the show, I only did 3 episodes. And people kind of tend to forget that because of my association with the show, that they feel like I've been doing it solidly for 10 years. And I haven't quite. I started doing it solidly from season 6 onwards on The Walking Dead. And I've done kind of a few years, 3 years, I think, on Fear. So that's been my kind of association with it. But when it started, we hadn't, a bit like Line of Duty, we had no idea what it was going to turn into. And anybody who says they did have some idea of it is a downright absolute liar, and I will tell it to them to their faces, because no one could envisage that it was going to turn into the behemoth that it's turned into.
Do you know who this bookie belongs to?
Look, if you know what's good for you, right, you give me everything.
Fish, what are you doing up there? What does it look like I'm doing up here? This is starting to hurt, Solomon!
Drop the screen now. How you doing, Vince?
I'll be doing a lot better. You stop using my name.
I can't, not mention Snatch, because I think that was maybe the first thing that I ever saw you in when I was way too young, maybe 11. And it is just such like a brilliant snapshot in British film history. Tell us about working with Guy Ritchie on that.
It's weird. I was having this conversation with someone else the other day, and it made me go back and watch the film, and I hadn't seen the film.
Oh, really?
I hadn't watched the film maybe in 10, 15 years, something like that. And it kind of, I can see why it stands the test of time, really. I mean, it still feels strangely kind of present and current in a very weird way, partly because it has no kind of specific time within its kind of story. It's just happening. It started very weirdly in the kind of sense that we got the scripts Wednesday morning. We read for the parts on Wednesday afternoon. We got offered them on Thursday. The deal making that could usually take a lot of time. It was a take or leave it deal. It was either you take it or you don't, and we move on to someone else.
Wow.
And Matthew Vaughan, and when he with his producer head on, and it was terribly paid. I remember that. It was rotten paid. I laughed when we got the first offer. I was like, "You're having a laugh, don't you? That's just the start." And my agent went, "No, it's a take." It was rubbish, rubbish, even at that stage. And I hadn't done that many films, but I knew that was rubbish. And but after Lock, Stock, you kind of you either say yes or no. And when we were auditioning, they paired off everybody for the audition. So when we walked in that Wednesday afternoon, I would say that every black male actor between the ages of 19 and 80 was in that room. everybody was in that room, and they just started pairing people off, and they put me and Robbie G together. And I think this might have just become urban legend, but I think we were the first two in.
Right.
So we kind of went in. So when they were doing the deal, they, just to sweeten the pot, they said, if Lennie says no to the money, then we move on. But we don't just move on with Robbie and somebody else. We move on to two completely different people. So, which is a hell of a way to do a deal.
Wow.
And it worked. So there was no way I'm going to say, me and Robbie are phoning each other going, what are we going to do? Are you going to say yes? Am I going to say yes? And, so we kind of said yes. And then we said yes to it on Thursday. We had a day's read through, costume fitting and all of that on the Friday. And we were filming on the Saturday. And it happened really quickly. And our first scene, as you would imagine, was a scene that actually didn't make it to the final cut because we actually went back and reshot almost a third of the film after we had completed filming.
Why was that?
Because as I remember it, I don't know for absolute sure, but the big fight in where Brad gets hit and he falls into the water and he has to come back up and do all of that. Once they shot that, they were like, oh, the rest of the film, once they saw that cut together, they were like, we need to do differently the end of the film. So we went back, not shot everything, but we shot quite a lot, a big chunk of it. So the scene that we first shot on the first day was actually myself and Robbie, all of the travelers, and Brad was the scene in the caravan where we were trying to sell him back the dog. And like I say, it didn't make the cut, but that was our first day of filming. So it was surreal right from the beginning. And it was a bit, filming on it, as I was saying to someone the other day, was a bit, Guy was at his kind of cocksure kind of preem in kind of, he was king of the hill at that particular point, and so everybody wanted to be around him. Everybody wanted to come down, and it was the end of the 90s, and it was Britpop, and it was everything. So almost every day, it felt like, it actually wasn't, but almost every day there was someone behind the camera who had come down to see what Guy was doing this time around. And because Brad Pitt was on set, that everybody wanted to come down and see him. So you'd come by, you'd be finishing a scene, and Guy would go, boys, come over. Have you met Madge? And it will be Madonna. And then you'd kind of go, boys, come over. Do you know the Gallagher brothers? And it would be Liam and Noel. Or guys, come over. Do you know Nick? Yeah, and it would be the Rolling Stones. And everybody, or Posh and Beck, or what's his name, Craig David, or just everybody.
This is brilliant. This is like was
just behind the camera, and you'd be kind of going, "Oh right, yeah, hello, how you doing? How's it going? What's happening with the scene, though, Guy?" So it was a surreal journey, but also I have to say, and it wouldn't be fair to say that the film has done me a lot of favors, really, particularly when I went to America and tested the water over there. I'd be lying if I didn't say the fact that they could point to he's that guy from Snatch, because it was a film that is a bit like a Tarantino film or that Nora Jones record. Everybody watched it, everybody had it, and everybody in the business watched it. So it gained me access to a few rooms. I have absolutely no doubt. Which made up for how terribly paid it was.
I've got so much more that I want to ask you about, but just really quickly before we go, you mentioned that you've got 3 daughters. What are their favourite things to watch you in?
There are a few things that they haven't watched me in because they get too upset about it, and they were like, "There's a thing I did that actually is where I met Marlon and Daniel, who write on Save Me, a thing called Run." And which was I can't remember who they did it for. I saw it first off on Netflix, and it was on Netflix for a while. And it was 4 kind of episodes of 4 interlocking stories. and two of my girls, they've tried to watch it about 4 times, and they just go, no, you're too sad in it, can't watch it, can't handle it, makes me cry. And I don't know, I think they like Snatch. They say they really like Save Me. I mean, to be absolutely honest, most of the time we don't kind of spend a huge amount of time talking about it. And I don't, for a long time when they were growing up, a lot of the stuff I was doing, they couldn't watch because they were too young. And they kind of, every now and then they'll kick me and go, why don't you tell me you were doing this thing? Why don't you tell me that there's this thing? I think they like, well, I know they really like Save Me.
Save Me is wonderful, and Save Me 2 is equally excellent. And all episodes of Save Me 2 are available on Sky Atlantic on demand and Now TV, and they're on DVD right now, so go out and buy it for everyone that you know, because everyone needs to see your performance, Lennie. It's really, really
Thank you very much.
Stunning. So on behalf of BFI at Home and the BFI and Radio Times Television Festival, I would like to thank Lennie and Sky and World Productions for working with us on this event. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. I've just looked at myself on the screen. Am I really that dark?
You're quite dark.
Am I looking like I'm in complete darkness?
Don't change the lighting now. It's a bit too late after our chat.
Yeah, no, well then, I apologise. I was trying not to look at myself.
So the BFI have been working really, really hard to bring their programmes to your homes. So if you've been enjoying this chat, and I'm sure you did, I mean, just for that Snatch story alone, then if you're able to, I would be very, very grateful if you would show your support for the BFI by making a donation. So you can donate £5 by texting BFI at home to 70085, and text cost £5 plus one standard rate message. I feel like I'm on kids TV doing that weird terms and conditions bit at the end. Or if you want to find out where else you can donate, then you can find all the information that you need in the description box right below this video. So from me and from everyone at the BFI and from Lennie, thank you so much for your support.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
And please support.
Thank you.